Club Radio. Club Light Radio.
Check it out.
Drop it.
Club Light Radio, this is Table Talk, and hi, this is your host DJ Georgia Nicole, and I am so excited today because we haven't been table talking for a while, but we have a very special day for you today. As you know, Club Light Radio as a station is expanding, and we're really excited to bring on a couple of our new hosts who have a fantastic show named Victory for Today. And so I wanted them to come on and just introduce themselves to you and give you a little taste of what you can expect, because this is definitely going to be the type of show where you're informed, you're brought up to speed, you're provoked, your thoughts are going to be going in a completely different direction, or maybe you'll just be challenged to look at your thoughts a little bit more closely. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce them and let them say hi. Our guests today are Dr. Donald and Yvonne Taylor. Go on and say hi to everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone.
Great. Well, welcome to Table Talk with us
Thank
today.
you.
So I just wanted to open up by asking you just to tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and how you came to this moment.
A long story, I'll make it very short. Originally, I'm from New York, born and raised in New York, in Columbus, Ohio. Served in service, went to Ohio State.
Hey.
Yay, Buckeyes.
Yay, Buckeyes.
Did some city planning with City of Columbus. Worked as a development director for a homeless shelter. I have been doing consulting business for the last 15 years, more or less, helping faith-based and nonprofit organizations. I have a BS in social work, a master's in public administration, master's in divinity, and a doctorate in theology and ministry.
That's a lot of school.
That's a lot of school. Too much school sometimes.
That's a lot of school.
I have pastored churches. I have done church development. I work in organizations around capacity building. I have an own consulting business, Third Day Development, and we work with churches and individuals to help them build their capacity around grant writing, capacity building, fundraising, board development, things like that, strategic planning. And also I do personal coaching with individuals.
Yes, he does do personal coaching, because the only reason why I'm here today is because he's helping to keep me on track. So I really have to vouch for the personal coaching side.
That's a work in process,
Yes,
Georgia.
I am definitely a work in progress. You guys know this. If you've been listening to me, I've come a long way, but there's still a lot further to go. So what about you, Yvonne? Come on and share with us, because you have such a rich background as well we'd like to hear about.
Yes, well, thank you for asking. I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh.
And I think my journey to this point was a little different. And I grew up in a nice household. I was the person who married young and unfortunately didn't make the best choices in marriage. And ended up that I was in a domestic violence situation for 3.5 years. And it was at a time when there were no domestic violence services available. And with the help of family, friends, and just the strength of my own personal beliefs in God, I was able to get myself out of that situation. Went to Ohio State University and received a master's degree. First a bachelor's degree in sociology. Went back and received my master's degree in social work and a master's degree in public administration.
Wow. Between the two of you, I think we're looking at 10.
Well, you have also an associate
like
degree.
Yeah, I do have
so
an associate degree.
bachelor's,
Well.
2 masters. I have 4, so we got 8.
Oh my God! Okay,
Wait.
go on and continue. This is the most educated group of people I've ever sat down to talk with.
Really believe that education is a key to opening doors, particularly for people of color.
Yes.
It doesn't give you the American dream. They say that it does, but it doesn't. But it certainly doesn't help you, hurt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then in time, I worked with the MRDD population for about 10 years. and went back, received my master's, and then switched over and began to do social work in the area of domestic violence, which is, probably natural considering what I went through.
Right.
And, they say that whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I have been a strong domestic violence sexual assault advocate, I would say, for at least 16 years, working in various shelters and working at a state level.
Wow.
So
this is a mighty team. We are sitting with two world changers right here. And speaking of the world, you've had the opportunity to be in different places around the world.
Yes, we have went to Uganda 4 years ago, doing a mission trip, Yvonne and I, and we have worked doing with a local foundation to do some international funding of ministries. Our focus is empowerment and building capacities of organizations to help them be more effective with limited resources they have. So that's on a global level as well as a national level. One thing we know that organizations are facing crunches right now. Everybody's money's tight. The need is overwhelming, but I believe God is telling us to do things anew so that we can more effectively serve people. Because I think there's a revolt that's coming up, a revolt of people being aware that we are socially responsible for each other, and that God calls us not only to be holy, but also to be spokespersons for injustice in society.
Wow. Now this is really, really important to talk about, especially with the situation in our country that we're currently facing, and also with us being upon election season. There's so much in that. Candidates have their platforms right now, and there's a lot to discuss. And right now in this current election term, we have people that are as far left and as far right as you can take, and then those that kind of fall in the middle, and even those that we haven't seen in a while, like people like Bernie Sanders, who's obviously a socialist at heart, and then you also have other people who are not sure what they want to be, if they're going to be Republican or independent tomorrow. Right. But when you talk about social responsibility, what are some things that you think that need to be considered or people are not really talking about enough that might make a big difference in our society?
Well, when I think about it, I'm a big advocate of social justice, and I believe that a country is as strong as its weakest people. And this is a country of great wealth, and yet we have great pockets of poverty. And sometimes people can say, well, people's lives are of their own choosing, but at the end of the day, I truly believe that people come into this world and we already enter a system in this country that is set up that doesn't put people on level playing fields. So when I think about social justice and I look around, I think about, regardless of what I see, what are the root causes of what I see? What are the root causes of children going to bed hungry? What are the root causes of people not having enough health care? What are the root causes of there not being enough housing? And it's not always that pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of thing. It's so much more than that. We have a rich history in this country of racism and discrimination and economic injustice. And I don't believe that is necessarily just drawn on colored lines, but it's also drawn on economic and class lines.
Oh, yeah. Classism is a big thing.
Yes.
Right now.
I think class is a major issue, and I have stopped labeling myself as a liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican. I'm pro-life, but not in the context of pro-life we're hearing about now related to abortion. I'm pro-life in the fact that I believe that society has an obligation for every person to have decent education, decent health care, a safe place to live, a decent job, a decent opportunity. And a lot of times the conservative movement will talk about, well, I want to ensure that we get the child here, but once they're here, you're on your own. Here's your books, here's your 9-to-5 job, go out and make it. But in reality, society has a bigger obligation, and my theology is a theology of empowerment, where we're looking that everyone that God blessed with life is given an opportunity to achieve the most they possibly can achieve.
Wow. So in the context of that, when we're looking at things that some people believe are basic rights and privileges, other people think they're not, and it's interesting when I look at things like healthcare, like the right to healthcare. Is that a right or is that a privilege?
That's a right. My point is a right. It's because as society is not known for the most it can, for those who are rich. It's for the least. Mm-hmm. How we provide for the hungry, how we provide for the powerless, the handicapped, the elderly, the youth, the people who are broken. Society is supposed to be the point to step in and provide services. And once they're up on their feet, fantastic, be a full thing that achieve their maximum out in society. But society is, as I see it, role is to help people achieve the maximum amount, not to say, well, every man for himself, a social Darwinism that every man is based upon their abilities, and if they don't have abilities, too bad.
Wow. And that's important to talk about, because I think sometimes that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And when we look at mentality and just how people address the social needs overall, we're starting to see a little bit of a regression, I think, where people are starting to think it's us versus them. And the idea of commonwealth is very crown, and so we don't need to take care of everyone. We have enough opportunity in this country where everyone should have equal access, and you can make it by yourself. What kind of things, Yvonne, do you think are getting in the way of that?
Well, for one, we don't have access. So, to even say, well, we all have equal access is ridiculous to begin with. Because the educational system isn't equal. So for people who go to public schools that are, not having quality books, not having quality teachers, a lot of other things, they are walking out least prepared to contribute to society, and it's a world economy. So how do you compete when you have people from other countries that are educated so much more above you? And that's not the fault of the person coming out of school. That's our educational system. So right there, we don't have equal access. And once we're out and we start looking around at jobs, a lot of people don't have fathers, mothers, cousins, uncles to get them in for an internship, to get them into their first job, to teach them skills and crafts. So again, things aren't equal because the resources aren't equal to begin with. And so all of that gets in the way. And I think until people recognize that, they just kind of kid themselves. We do a lot of lip service about how things are equal and how people are motivated. But it's just not like that. It's absolutely just not like that.
Reality.
Yeah, we put such a high premium on money and resources, and yet if we really look at how money is passed down and how wealth is passed down, well, I mean, just from that, things aren't equal and they're not level. And so if money stays in families and the wealth is just passed down, those who don't will never have, unless we have a redistribution of wealth in the country, perhaps even in the world. And, I look at our country and I just think, okay, we have many, many resources and riches here. But if everyone were willing to give up some, everyone could have some of everything. But we have to have the biggest, the best, the newest.
Right.
And so a lot of our resources go to, and I know it's good for the economy, but it goes to, now I have a house, and then I have a bigger house, now I have a car, and then I have 2 cars, maybe even 3 in an SUV and a boat.
Right.
And, oh, well, my next door neighbors are walking to the bus stop. So, why is it so much like that? And at the end of the day, none of us are that happy.
Well, I guess I'll play the advocate on that then. If you have, so let's talk a bit about redistribution.
Can I jump in this?
Yeah, I'll let you jump in. Get in there before we go for it.
Is that one thing is that we're having incorrect paradigm shift has occurred. In the last generation. I think we're still operating on the 50s mentality. That there's opportunities, that you work yourself up, that the best talents, skills, abilities entails that you get a good middle class job. You'll stay there until you retire. You'll be able to buy a new home. You'll be able to buy a car every 2 years. You'll be able to buy all the toys you want. But the reality is, middle class jobs are not there. They're in China.
Agreed.
And now we are competing. The American workforce is now competing against Chinese, against Vietnamese, against Malaysia workforce. And so that means it's being driven by salaries, a downward salary competition, not an upward salary competition. So now, even though majority of people work, they are barely having a livable wage. You know, if you work for $9 an hour, you're up $18,000 a year. But it's already proven that you need to make $35,000 a year to have a livable lifestyle
in this country.
So it's not the issue of people being lazy. It's not the issue of people not taking advantage of opportunities. It's the fact that people are working 1-2 jobs and they're still not able to have a decent lifestyle.
Well, you know, I saw that in the news the other day. There was that gentleman the other day that in that company who moved everybody in his company's minimum salary to $70,000 a year.
Right.
Wow.
Well, this was news, and of course, everybody in the company, you would think, was very excited. Of course, except for top executives and his brother included, who was bringing a civil suit against him, mind you. But I was really impressed by this because I felt like that was really talking about the issue of closed pie thinking, that if you have something or you get more of something, that means there's less of it for me.
You take for someone else.
And I didn't really understand why people could be so angry if it doesn't affect their own personal bottom line. What's behind that? What do you think?
I think my point of view, I think what happened, we have associated a social Darwinism where the most successful rise to the top, the cream rise to the top.
Cream rise to the top.
And how we define that cream rise is how much we make. How big my car? How big is my car? You know, how big is my house?
Right.
How big is my bank account? How many patients will I take a year? And so toys define who we are. I just bring one thing to the table, and I'll be quiet, is that in many of our communities, Walmart is the biggest employer. Walmart. We're not talking about a major high-tech company. We're not talking about major manufacturing. They're not there. Walmart is there. And so if you look at the standard of living on Walmart's salary, where majority of their employees are part-time, you know, that's feeding this economy.
Wow.
So how can someone making $14,000 a year go and buy an average car that's costing $32,000 or $35,000? How can they buy a $200,000 house? You know, it's how can they even afford to go to a hospital?
Very true.
Health insurance.
Yeah.
So we have to look at some issues and stop blaming the victim and really said, how do we adjust to this changing economic system? And we have not heard that from politicians this election year.
Wow. And I know that you mentioned about, and I'm going to jump back into that because I think what we're talking about now piggybacks into what you were saying about redistribution of wealth. How does that work? How do we tell a person who says, look, I went through school, I finished, I did what I did, I worked my way up in my company. Now you're asking me to send money to people who didn't want to put in the work that I put in to get where I am. How do we handle that in this society? What do you think? What are some ideas?
I think be realistic. That we no longer drive our own economy. Our economy is driven on an international level. It's driven by Chinese. It's driven by Euro. It's driven by what's happening in Saudi Arabia. We have lost control, and we have lost control because we have allowed corporations to no longer be a national concept that, hey, I'm American, I'll make sure American workers are taken care of so they can buy my products. To now, I'm a global manufacturer, which means then I'll make my product anywhere as long as my cost is low. And it may not sell in that company is being made, but hell, I can take them over.
I take them anywhere I want to take
them. I take any place I want to take.
Yeah.
Sell it somewhere.
You know, so look at, I tell Yvonne, we went to a store the other day and looking at Frigidaires. I said, I remember Frigidaires was $500, right? $250. Now everything's $2,000. I said, who can afford that?
Right.
But there's a market for it, because if we don't buy it, there's a population somewhere in the globe that will buy it.
Wow.
You know, Georgia, I think we kid ourselves when we say I worked hard and I made it, because no one's made it on their own.
That's true.
Yes, I worked hard, but it was an opportunity for me to go to school. And I had that opportunity because of someone else's labor, not because of mine. I seized the opportunity, but the opportunity was there because of others that came before me. And so for me, I believe that I have a duty, an obligation, and also a desire to give back. And for people who say, I did it, they forget no one operates in a vacuum. You know, no one has created their own wealth for many years. and so it's just not that simple. And in this country, we do look at individualization, and everything is I rather than we, rather than community, other than us, family, an extended network. And I really think people need to get back to that. They need to look beyond their individual self and their individual family to their brothers and their sisters and their cousins and their neighbors and community. We're sitting here in Arizona, and it's not my home. And I'm always struck by the bricks that are around the walls.
Oh, yeah, these subdivision bricks. Woo!
You know, so you never have real opportunity to get to know your neighbors unless you go out of your way and make effort. You know, it's hot in the summer, so you go from your garage to your car, and you leave, you come back the same way, and you're in the house. When you're using your backyard, well, we have the brick walls, and so you see no one else. And that further isolates us. You know, I look at all of the technology, and technology is good. But when we don't interact with each other as people, when we don't put the technology down and begin to talk and recognize we're all people, we have the same desires, we have the same needs, then, you know, we don't have that connection and we don't have that bond. And that's part of the problem. Everyone wants to only be responsible for their self, and they have no sense of community and of neighborhood.
Okay, here's where I'll jump in a little bit, because that's the purpose of our show. Victory for Today purpose is to break down the barriers, to talk on empowerment of individuals in their own lives, to go through our traditional perceptions of our own self-worth, but see us from perspective of God and what God calls us to. He calls us to live in victory, regardless of the economic or social situation we face. We are given the power to be victorious, and often that is not talked about in the media. We talk about all the negative things, all the barriers that we face, but never about the victory God gives us to be victorious in our personal lives, in our families, in our jobs, regardless of what society brings against us. And Yvonne and I hope our show will be able to touch people and to empower them, not from a sense of personal empowerment, but from divine empowerment, where God, through our Lord Jesus Christ, sacrifice on the cross, has given us victory if we claim it and stop using the world definition of success to be how we define ourselves. We are God's children. We are the one Christ died for. We are the one that we are special in God's sight. And we cannot let the world define that specialness and before us. We got to claim the victory that's here today.
Amen. Wow. We've got about 2 minutes, and so I'm really thinking about this, and we're so glad to have you here, both of you here, because I really think that what you're going to share with our audiences is going to be enriching, fulfilling, and I really think it's going to be challenging. Encouraging us to come together and be a society, be a family under God and under the principles of God and what God has in store for us. We will achieve as a group. And I think that goes with the theme from the Bible. I mean, if you ever look at how God blessed Israel, or whenever he spoke blessing, he did very little individual blessing. It was mainly corporate blessing, where he wanted to bless a group of people. And so what kinds of things are you hoping to impart on those that are around you? If there's somebody listening today that wants to know more, that wants to know, how do I get a hold of success? What is success according to God? What would you say to them today?
Well, let me start. I'll name a couple things. I think success from a spiritual point of view is, one, loving ourselves. We are of value. We are God's creation. We are God's children. Each of us are special. Second thing is love God creation. If we can't love those around us, we have misused God's creation. We have polluted it. We have throw trash here. We have have oil spilt there. But in the process, we have ruined God's creation. We got to love God's creation, and God's creation is our brothers and sisters. God's creation is the nature around us. So I think the two issues: love ourselves, love God's creation, and the big one, is to love God.
Amen. I love it.
Great. Yvonne?
I think that I would say to begin by re-examining definition of life, success, of joy, of who we are, and find that definition of how God defines us, and to begin to live our life out of that, regardless of what the world says, or regardless of that self-talk in our head that sometimes says something else. But if we really recognize who we are in Christ and we walk that out, then I think we'll be okay.
Sounds great. Well, this is Georgia Nicole. One more time, thank you so much for joining us here on Table Talk, and I look forward to talking to you guys again next week.